I'm a big fan of just playing premium games and be left alone. Like as more things become online and digitally available, the less I want it, like, and so I really like just premium games. It's like, first of all, I just want to be the hero. I don't want to have a bunch of 10-year-olds just demolish me in some game that takes me hundreds of hours to master. I like the puzzle nature of things, but I needed to have a little bit more of an emotional connection. Like, tell me a story. Let me like fight a dragon, save a princess, or whatever. I'm pretty simple and stupid in that way, but it's in many ways a lot of this pushes towards like, no, you need to play more different things, and I don't really. Is that how you eat? Do you eat something new every day? No, you don't. You eat the same 17 things probably on rotation. Same sandwich. You always get the same way that coffee is made. So there's like a habit or a ceremony to it for me, and it sort of tries to disrupt that in some ways. I like Slay the Spire a lot, and I have to admit that I haven't started it yet, but I want to do Baldur's Gate 3 and Cyberpunk.
I mean, the thing about a roguelike is it'll last you a lifetime, right? I
Mm.
got really into Hades too, right? It's like Slay the
Oh,
Spire. That's a game you can play for the rest of your life.
mhm.
You know, like I can be working on Ascension level 10, forever. Welcome to Unboxing, Play and Profit for the Gaming Curious. I'm Lane Nooney,
En I'm Joost van Dreunen.
and we're here digging deep on why games matter in today's economy. On the docket today, Friday, April 24th, Xbox's new CEO rolls down the price of Game Pass. We'll light a candle for the cloud game revolution that never was, and talk about how this all went up in smoke. All of that and more with your two very flame-retardant co-hosts. But first, we've got some catching up to do. I couldn't even get a smile out of you for that.
What's on fire?
The dream of the cloud gaming revolution.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Does that combust, or is that more flammable? Like, how does
I
that?
think it went up in vapor, I mean, I'm probably mixing some metaphors, but listen, I had 3 minutes to write these, so let's not get too
Well,
ambitious about what
well
I'm
done.
thinking.
I'm very
Uh,
flame.
were you late today because you were fielding many, many, many inquiries into the future of games?
I also picking up a lot of loose stitches this morning, so it's been interesting. It's been interesting. There's a real like gear shift going on. There's a lot of people getting laid off. There's a lot of people switching jobs, and you sort of like it's like the ground you stand on doing business. So my company is a service provider, so you end up talking to lots of companies, and you kind of just see the churn and the turmoil and the movement. It's very interesting. And so it just creates a lot of logistical challenges. Like, what happened to Christine? Well, Christine is now no longer here, so now it's over to Joey. Oh, well, can someone tell me their email address? Because otherwise, and it's like, so that has a lot of components to it. And so that keeps me busy. That keeps
Hmm.
me plenty busy, but it's going well. The AI tool we're building is interesting, so I'm very excited about that. How's the end of the semester treating?
Can't come soon enough, two
No?
lectures left. So,
I thought you have two.
yeah.
I only have one.
Monday, we talk about it's the dawn of user generated internet culture in the 1990s. So, we talk
Hmm.
about MS Paint, and we talk about the GIF and like GeoCities and that sort of thing. And also like kind of the .com boom and bust. So, from Web 1.0
Hmm.
to Web 2.0.
Hmm.
And then the last lecture is on like Google search, basically. Sort of the capture of the internet through, you know, the standardizing of human attention in the name of like data surveillance.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Very cool. I like the MS Paint angle.
yeah, it's based on there's an article about MS Paint in actually a issue of the Journal of Visual Culture that I co-edited when I was a graduate student. It was the first ever journal issue on internet memes, and I commissioned this piece off of a young scholar named Patrick Davison, who was actually one of the founders of, I believe he was one of the founders of Know Your Meme. I'm trying to remember what it's what that piece is called. It's, oh yeah, Because of the Pixels. So it's like a platform study of MS Paint
Hmm.
and how MS Paint kind of set was like the condition of possibility for the first version of like internet visual culture because it was installed on everyone's computer. And so when you look at meme culture from the late 90s, early 2000s, it has all of these kind of technological residues of MS Paint, which are like the
Hmm.
use of the mouse as the primary drawing tool, the prevalence of like jaggies as part of the aesthetic. So it's a nice like it's a way of looking at a piece of software and understanding both its kind of aesthetic and cultural impact.
It's
I
a
teach
yeah, I
them
grew up
about
with that
Windows
stuff.
95,
Hmm.
like
Oh, it was huge. It was
critical
huge.
texts.
I
They
was
get to see.
you
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, no. I remember like putzing around when we first had a personal computer at home, and like you would draw on that, and it was terrible. But it was
Yeah.
sort of exciting that you could draw on it, and then people would, you'd kind of like figure out like little squares that you could color differently. But so that was sort of my origin memories around user interface. I thought it was fascinating. But I guess that's like it's up there with cuneiform for you. Yeah, it's
Fair
basically
enough.
the
It is
cuneiform.
a funny time of the lectures because like they, I when I did the history of personal computing, I talk about the Altair and the creation of Altair Basic, which was like the piece of software that basically started Microsoft. And I show video footage of like Bill Gates or like a photograph of Bill Gates in the 70s, and I heard a student audibly gasp. Like they just like didn't know, like the idea that he was alive in the 20th century, like they, it's like this was a man and he was present doing things like 30 years before you were ever born. And like actually he's here at the origin point of this entire industry, right? And he's still cooking, still showing up in the Epstein files. Like,
Still showing up. He's still culturally relevant.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's interesting.
Mark
Yeah, no.
Andreessen is someone I have to talk about and take a big shit on because he gets on the cover of Time magazine in like 1994 or 96 for developing Netscape, and they literally photograph him sitting on a throne, right, and with no shoes on, and because he was supposed to be about this new kind of quote unquote Wild West of like these young tech men who were going to change the world, and now 30 years later this guy is he's a techno fascist. Like he believes that like billionaires should run the world. Like we baked this, guys. Like we told these men they were kings when they were 24, and look, they still think that. You know.
Mm. Yeah, I mean I think like fortune and fame and success, like they have a way of becoming a problem over time. It doesn't matter the discipline. I think, at some point you just need to, you can't force those people to stay in their lane because they're just too big of a
They're too
celebrity in
rich.
their
They
own.
can buy. They can warp
Yeah,
reality
yeah,
around them, right?
yeah. And so,
Um,
but in fairness, like the human psyche, I don't think is well equipped for that. Like, what would you do? I mean, they say it, I remember this even, it's sort of like a counter reaction. Here's the psychology of this for me. The moment in my doctoral writing where you start doing TAing and sort of adjuncting, whatever, there is a clause in the contract that you sign or whatever, the manual that says like, yeah, look, listen, it's very exciting to be in front of a classroom after being in the library for a long time working on your dissertation. This is not your opportunity to make this into a soapbox and like spout off on your political perspectives. Like you're teaching a class. Like just be clear about that. But that's clearly in there because a lot of people were like, "Oh my God, people are finally listening to me, and I've had all these amazing ideas." And now
you
these
had to
poor
sign a
students,
contract that said that. I have
the,
never heard of such a thing nor done such a thing.
I doubt that you would do it, but it came around in like some kind of manual.
Yeah,
I
that
don't
was
remember.
probably a teaching handbook. That is not a contract.
No, but whatever. It wasn't like you must sign this, but it was more along the lines of like let's list all the pitfalls for people that are first starting to do this as they become teachers or whatever. And it's like it's very difficult. So now you've invented Netscape, you made $1 billion. There's no manual that says, "Hey, it's so cool you're in the billionaires club now. Why don't you take a why don't you take a beat? Why don't you take it easy? Stop buying giraffes for your mansion, like whatever like the crazy thing is that you have in your head, like because no one will stop you. Like a classroom with students, they won't fight you back on this. So I think that that's part of the problem. It's like there's no railing anymore, and people just go
Yeah,
off
there used to
into.
be just a 90% tax rate. That was how we handled this, right? It was like you couldn't have enough wealth
You think
to
that's the
buy
answer?
a political system. That was, I mean, that was one of the primary guardrails, was that the in the so-called glory years of America, that was how we handled wealth, was that it was excessively taxed. And that was when we built all the amazing infrastructure that the United States was so famed for, right? From like, the highway system to the development of the internet. Like, where the fuck do you think all that money came from?
Hmm.
Right? It was a
No.
90% tax rate, like the highest earners in the country, you know?
Hmm.
Um, and
Yeah.
that has just been a slow decay since the mid 70s for that trickle down economic benefit that we never seem to see.
I wonder how many libraries are being built right now, dude. Is there any data on that? Is
Well,
anybody keeping track
there's
of the
certainly a
library
Trump
increase?
library that may or may not be structurally sound, but we'll have a jet inside of it. So, we a president absolute clown show. I feel like we should get on with the news. Our producer has a hard out.
Let's go.
Lots of bad things going on in the game industry, but one of the more, well, this is not a bad thing. This particular news is not a bad thing, but it is a curious thing, and it feels like a barometer for other stuff. This news has been covered widely. I'm looking at it at Reuters right now. Microsoft cuts Xbox Game Pass price and to remove Call of Duty Day One inclusions. So Xbox Game Pass Ultimate now costs $22.99 versus $29.99, so 23 rather than 30. And PC Game Pass has been lowered from $16.50 to basically $14. This is a major strategy shift under new gaming boss Asha Sharma. And yeah, Yost, so what are the, first off, let me ask you, before we get into the analysis, what are the rumblings of, like, what are people coming to you asking you about what this means?
So the question that a lot of people have is like, is this too late? Is this sort of like it's the Dutch say mustard after the meal? Like oh you're lowering the price. That's one problem. Said like is it reversible, right? And so and by it the implication is that Game Pass wasn't as successful as they wanted it, and so can they sort of undo or restructure the value proposition for consumers so that it will start to become more popular and grow again? I think from the beginning, I mean, there was an internal memo that leaked. I think we discussed that already, but it was clear to Asha Sharma that the price of the Game Pass was too high. It said something like it's too expensive, like $30 a month. What are you kidding? And it's probably fair. Like it's one of the most expensive
No,
entertainment
it's over
subscriptions out
it's
there.
over $300 a year, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah, so you're talking easy like 350, 360, I guess, if you count it all up. But then, most people on console will buy two and a half titles. So two and a half times 80 is what? 160, $200. So now you're almost at like a 60% markup from just buying the two and a half games that I want to
Yep,
play anyways. And so why would I
yep.
do that with Call of Duty? And so the logic makes sense, and she stated as much. And then what I like is that she's very quickly turned course. She's like, "Yeah, this is my second week." She seems very practical, pragmatic. Like a lot of times, a CEO will come in and spend like 90 days getting to know everybody, and doing like intake, hi, so nice to meet you, and they fly everywhere and they shake everybody's hands and they want to just be approachable, do town halls everywhere. Not Asha. Asha's like, no, that
Not
shit's
Asha. We're on a
expensive.
first name basis now with Asha.
They're just people. They're just people. I like Phil very much. But I do like
Okay,
this
okay,
new regime,
keep focus.
Professor Nooney. So the so the questions that I get is like, will this meaningfully impact it? And I think the answer is yes, but more has to be done. I think it's really just one first shot in like a series of things that they have to do. You get like, okay, so now it's still 22.99, which is still $5 above the highest tier for the PlayStation. But the PlayStation is only like catalog titles, really. Like it's existing stuff. There's no day and date, just new content, and it's, I think,
Let
smaller
me
or more static.
let me ask. I'm gonna ask one kind of like let's put this in context question. Do we have a precedent for a subscription price, a major subscription based platform, where of cutting price?
That's a that's exactly the kind of the question I'm trying to answer this week. So there is some
What
existing
people
literature
come to
on
this podcast for, the real takes.
the real text. Well, so once you get past the headlines, it's cool, but it's quite of a challenge. So most of the literature describes subscription cost price reductions in terms of adding an ad tier. So it's really sort of diluting the value, but asking you to suffer through ads kind of thing. So that's most of what you see out there. It's not common at all for them to just outright reduce the price. Now, in fairness, they're removing the day and date releases of their AAA titles like Call of Duty, so that will come separate. The way that they're structuring it is to say like you will have access to everything that's in there now, but any new follow-on, any new releases in Game Pass will only show up a year later
Well, for
or
Call
whenever
of
the next
Duty
holiday.
specifically, I don't know if that's true for everything else,
Yeah,
but
okay, but that's
that
that's sort of the
seems to
stranger
be
things here.
the big one, you know.
That is absolutely the big one. And
And
so,
I guess that is okay. So one, we've not actually seen something like this before from a major subscription service saying like we're just rolling this down, right?
mhm.
Is there any chance we could get nice lowered subscription cost knock-on effects in any other, like could we get this trending, right? Could I be paying less for Netflix or Hulu or the 7 different streaming services I will need to watch all the WNBA games this season?
No, I don't think that that's going to happen. I think that
Okay.
there's a degree to which a lot of these companies are now reliant on the ongoing success and the lowering of churn for their subscription services because
Okay.
the margin is so enormous, right? It's like it's where they make their money. It's also relatively, it's the kind of thing where you have a lot of lever, so you can like gradually increase the price point. People are kind of locked in because that's where their series are. They maybe their whole household is part of it. I find it difficult to unsubscribe from Disney Plus. I never watch it, but my kids do, so I pay for it. I recently negotiated the release of Paramount Plus because my Max had the 13-year-old had seen most of South Park. I'm like, all right, let's be done with this because that's the only reason we subscribe to it. And so then I have to kind of like take it
Just
out of his,
get him the DVDs, you know. Uh,
there's that part too, but it's also the like you just accumulate subscriptions. There has to be a habit of culling these things,
yeah.
and if you don't pay attention, so that's very profitable for a lot of companies because people forget, and then all of a sudden you get hit by a bill again, and
So
so they like that revenue model.
so well, and of course it obviously depends on how cost intensive the product is, right? There's lots of subscriptions that aren't versus but games is fairly cost intensive. But let me ask you, so with a price cut, there has to be an equation somewhere for
Mm.
the amount of user ad you would expect from a price reduction, right?
Hmm.
What's that math, and what's the range on the different outcomes different equations might have?
So you mean like if you lowered by
Yeah, if you
1%,
lower the
$9?
price by this percentage, what part of that will transfer to increase subscribers, right?
That's
Like
a
there
really good
has
one.
to, I'm sure there was a Excel sheet that they went through, right? What kind of subscriber gain do you think they would be anticipating from something like this?
So when it comes to optimal pricing, it's really about the tiers. And so by lowering the highest tier, they open themselves up to, I believe, like adding, meaningful numbers to Game Pass. So if we go with 35 million, which it probably isn't, that's they haven't disclosed it, but that's their most recent number, which is like years old. You would expect like some subset of players to like subscribe or resubscribe at that price point. So call it 5 million people, give or take. What the upside is really in terms of value is that you now get back to actual transaction and premium sales. I think that that's really where they're trying to go with this. And so you have more, so you have your baseline of subscriptions, which will meaningfully increase because your price is lower, but you also now have the opportunity to upsell people like the diehard fans, right? So subscriptions, the problem, we discussed this previously, is like the reason they had a $30 price tier is because the diehard Call of Duty fans use up most of the bandwidth in that model, right? They impose the most on the infrastructure. So to get to profitability, they have to keep raising the prices. And that makes sense to some degree because an average user won't use it enough or will do it at a break even point so that like heavy users make the costs too high, in other words. By offloading some of the heavy users into a premium model, you relieve the lack of profitability on the infrastructure. So
Hmm.
there's both like yeah they're going to add a few subscribers, but they're mostly reducing the costs. I think you have to listen to
Interesting.
this in two ways, right? So when someone like Asha says Game Pass is too expensive, everybody hears is too expensive for me as a player. But I think what she also means is too expensive for Microsoft to keep this up, right? And so I think that's the key piece there.
And so so no longer treating Call of Duty as a value add for the subscription.
Hmm.
So we don't think that will produce significant churn out of the subscription service
Let me think about that.
because there must be some percentage of users who are there for Call of Duty,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
so now they don't have to pay $30 a month. They can just leave and pay 80 or whatever, this
Hmm.
shit now costs
Be done.
and be done with it, right?
I don't think that it's going to be a huge drag on the overall service. I think, like it's just for what it offers you, it's for the average user probably not worth 30 bucks. Right? I think
Yeah.
that's the short version. And so by lowering the price, it becomes a little bit more reasonable. There's still a lot of good stuff in there. I think that Game
Yeah,
Pass has
totally.
done a really good job. It's like a huge catalog. It has a lot of quality games. Their aggression, like they're very aggressively expand to like cloud and game streaming and stuff. I think that those are all good features to have, and that makes them competitive. They just haven't quite figured out yet. The thinking I have is that we're going to go see sort of like an Instacart version of this, right? That's where Asha was before, and what we'll see is like you get this sort of Amazon Prime model where you have a subscription that gets you these benefits, and you can still buy things separately, but there's sort of a baseline of content and available things to do at a certain price point. That's probably going to be more of the model here. We'll see. I mean, it feels like an incomplete set. Like, in many ways, addressing the issue of Game Pass being too expensive is means first, like, you lower the price. Okay, great. We've done that now. Let's sit on that for a little
So
bit.
yeah, we've lowered the
What's
price,
next?
possibly increased subscriber base net,
Hmm.
lowered intensity on infrastructure
Hmm.
because your heaviest users are now paying kind of full freight to just play the giant game that they want to play.
Hmm. Hmm. Let me ask you, like, what services do you subscribe to?
Like games wise or in general?
Eh, Start with games.
Currently, none.
What?
What do I
Not
need
even
to
Game Pass?
subscribe to? I have subscribed to Game Pass in the past. I recently got off of it. So, I mean, I've complained previously about my Power Wash Simulator 2 woes and about
Hmm.
how that made me so frustrated that I quit Game Pass and just I actually what I did was I upgraded my Xbox. Like I was using the last gen. I needed to
Hmm.
upgrade it anyway. There was finally a number of games that I wanted to play that I couldn't. without getting the new one. But there was this very frustrating thing when I was on the Xbox One where Power Wash Simulator 2 came out on Game Pass, but if you wanted to play it on the Xbox One, you could only play it cloud, and you had to pay for the premium $30 tier.
Mm-hmm.
And there were two problems with this. The cloud, like on the Xbox One, they would only let you play it as a cloud game. You could not install it onto your computer, and you had to pay
Mm-hmm.
for the premium tier for the cloud gaming specifically. And the
Mm-hmm.
problem with that was it played like shit on cloud. The lag was actually really disruptive, even for a
Mm-hmm.
game like that where there's not that much movement, but like the critical movement of moving the power washer needs to
Mm-hmm.
be super responsive. And
Mm-hmm.
it just like it was it created bad game feel. And then the other
Mm-hmm.
part was that it was just not worth $30 a month to play a game that cost 40 to buy it full freight. Just
Mm-hmm.
seemed stupid. And if I was more of a PC gamer person, I would have just bought it on my Steam Deck. But like I don't play a lot of PC gaming, largely because as much as I love my Steam Deck, the ergonomics of PC gaming just don't work for my body. It tends to
Mm-hmm.
aggravate my chronic pain. Just the held posture, the screen neck relationship, being in front of a television, I can is more adaptive for me. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I quit Game Pass. I just bought a new Xbox. I bought Power Wash Simulator, and I bought Cyberpunk as well. And I was just like, these games will keep me occupied for Cyberpunk could keep me occupied for literally years. Like I'm not playing enough. The other primary thing I'm playing is like Slay the Spire. Like these are not. I don't need a subscription. Like I have a games diet, but I don't. I'm most of. I have found that even sampling a wide range of games, there's phases where for a couple months I like to sample like like a big stack of like indie gems I haven't played before, and then otherwise a lot of what's on there is garbage or stuff I'm not interested in, or genres I don't care about, or whatever. So I don't
Yeah,
subscribe
yeah,
to.
no, it's the saddest thing because you know how much effort has like so much had to happen for people to make a game, for the infrastructure to be built and established, for like a pricing model and a subscription agreement, and all the lawyers and all the business people and all the creators to come together so that eventually some game makes it into the Game Pass, and then for you to say that's garbage. It's just like it's the saddest thing. It's a but I believe you, and I'm with you
What I
most of the
mostly
way.
find it useful for is to pay for it for a couple of months to sample a bunch of like small or mid-sized games. So I played through things like Dredge and Unpacking and
Mm,
Boyfriend Dungeon. Like every year or two, I will just kind of play through a stack of sort of
mm,
popular indie games and kind of get that broke containment basically and made it into
mm,
that were popular enough that they got included on Xbox Game Pass that I just haven't
mm.
played, and I'll play them there,
Interesting.
and then
Yeah, I
unsubscribe.
find it's I'm a big fan of just playing premium games and be left alone. Like as more things become online and digitally available, the less I want it, like, and so I really like just premium games. It's like, first of all, I just want to be the hero. I don't want to have a bunch of 10-year-olds just demolish me in some game that takes me hundreds of hours to like master. I like the puzzle nature of things, but I needed to have a little bit more of an emotional connection. Like, tell me a story. Let me like fight a dragon, save a princess, or whatever. I'm pretty, simple and stupid in that way. But it's in many ways a lot of this pushes towards like, no, you need to play more different things, and I don't really. Is that how you eat? Do you eat something new every day? No, you don't. You eat the same 17 things probably on rotation. Same sandwich. You always get the same way that coffee is made. So there's like a habit or a ceremony to it for me, and it sort of tries to disrupt that in some ways. And it's like, yeah, I don't need all that. So I do like I like to play like Halo, just so for like a couple hours, and you just kind of sit in that, and you just I'll play the multiplayer for that one because the mood is just I like that very much. But if I want to really do something, lean into it, it's more like Ghost of Tsushima or like a Breath of the Wild kind of thing. I like Slay the Spire a lot, and I have to admit that I haven't started it yet, but I want to do Baldur's Gate 3 and Cyberpunk
Yeah, I
because
mean,
they just
any
seem wonderful
any
games
of
to play.
these games will last you. I mean, the thing about a roguelike is it'll last you a lifetime, right?
Mm-hmm.
I got really into Hades too, right? It's like Slay the
Oh,
Spire. That's a game you can play for the rest of your life.
mm-hmm.
You know, like I can be working on Ascension level 10, forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And or yeah, Cyberpunk, which I will take an aside to say downloaded it, started playing it, and I think something's really going on in my life where I was like, this game is too depressing,
Well, it's Polish made,
you know. But I mean, I
so
think The
it's
Witcher
sort of a
still
somber.
had a kind of humor to it. Cyberpunk is dire. Have you played it? It's
I've played some of it.
really
Yes,
it's really
it's
grim. I mean, like
it's
one of the
super grim.
the first 20 hours of missions is like saving a woman from being a sex slave, it's like and then she kills herself anyway. Like sorry, spoiler alert. Like it's
Oh no.
very I knew it was I guess I knew it was dark, but I was like this is actually like a very this might be too depressing to play. Cuz like I bet this
Yeah,
is
no,
just
listen,
a
like,
bummer
listen.
all the way around.
If you like that kind of genre, there's plenty to go around.
I
It's
think I think I think I might have finally grown out of that genre. I was like, I don't know that I want to kill a man in this universe. Like this universe has enough problems without me showing up
is there
to
like a
like
pacifist
just light
playthrough?
people on fire robotically,
No,
like you all
this
need
is
universal basic income and like
everybody needs health insurance. We wouldn't have these
yeah,
problems.
yeah, like can everyone just like take a nap, like in this universe, right?
I think
Like
it's
I
just
don't
like
want to hang out here. This sucks. This world sucks.
it's a post-apocalyptic sci-fi future
I
dystopia
know.
where
All the same.
everybody's hangry all the time.
Yeah.
It's like no, I see it. It's I feel like that's sort of like the same thing that you see in movies or film, right? Where you have like a particular genre that is it just explores a part of human experience.
Yeah, except a game is like you're signing up for 100 plus hours inside that space, right? That's a very different proposition than I sit down for 2.5 in this film or even a television
Oh,
show.
no, completely agree. Completely agree. There is a
Yeah.
before and after version of me when it comes to Max Payne 3. There's a before Max Payne 3 Yoast, and then there was an after. And it's just like I've never recovered
Yeah.
emotionally, mentally, and it's I'm happy to admit it, but it's like you just like Jesus. And it did something. I mean, it was not a bad experience. It was sort of like it's a particular sort of internal journey or whatever, some exploration. And I see Cyberpunk live in that space too. Like it's just relentless in its dystopia or whatever.
All right, Yost. It is. We've been at this for like half an hour, but we've only got 15 minutes left with our producer. Is it time to get to exit tickets?
Let's do one.
What are your
Let's
students
do one.
cranking up?
So let's talk exit tickets. The name of the game at the end of the semester is like, what's the future? And so, there's questions around like new technologies, and then there's questions coming up around like the creator economy and celebrities and influencers. And so, one question that came up recently is sort of as we discussed how mobile game companies use intellectual property and famous people to sell games, to peddle games. You know, you see increasingly sort of like this emergence of a celebrity in some ways trying to sponsor or endorse games. And so one exit ticket reads, does celebrity influence translate into a long-term engagement, or is it primarily a short-term market effect? And I have some thoughts and data on that, but I'm curious from your perspective, like, how would you answer that?
Well, first I want to know is what do you can you give me an example of what you are thinking of when you say a celebrity promoting or a game?
Well, pick your favorite. We could do Kim Kardashian. We could do athletes. We could do. There's the Trump board game. I mean, there's a variety of different
Okay.
ways.
I do.
Too
Well, like
good.
celebrity is like, I mean, there's a wide array of ways of thinking about what celebrity is, right?
Hmm.
And celebrity is different from creator or influencer culture, right? And so they tend to get utilized in different ways, right? To have celebrity endorsement versus kind of like creator cross promotion are like, these are different marketing strategies for different kinds of products. I mean, there's the difference between a game that is branded for
Hmm.
someone, right? Kim Kardashian Hollywood being kind of the easiest example versus someone being a spokesperson for a game. I'm trying to remember like the match 3. Who is it who like I feel like there's some boomer who's always trying to get me to download like a match 3 game or something. God, who is it? My Kingdom for Don't you know what I'm talking about?
I don't know any boomers.
You definitely know these boomers.
I don't
I mean,
know.
I
Is
don't
this
I
a
don't think
TV thing?
celebrity endorsement for games. I think most of what you're doing is I would assume is trying to cut through noise
Mm-mm.
by attaching the game to a figure whose name you will pay attention to. And that just means that like the brand recognition is higher, right?
Of all the match three games, the one endorsed
Yeah, this
by
is the one that's promoted by
Taylor Swift
Reese
is.
Witherspoon or whatever.
Can't wait to play that one. That sounds amazing.
You
No, so,
talk for a minute. I'm gonna Google and try and figure this out.
all right. So I think it's fair to problematize like what do you mean by celebrity? So
Yeah,
it came up around the example that I always love is the Kim Kardashian Hollywood one. I loved it for a while. That was one of my favorite
which
case
I mean
studies.
that's an IP, right? I mean that's different than like a, or I would say that is different. That is different from like a someone just selling a game.
Well,
Anyway, I'll shut
so
up.
it's an interesting one for a few reasons. One is that game existed and no one played it or cared, and then
That's not
they
true. That game was wildly popular for the short period of life that it existed. It had a moment of it broke containment. Kim Kardashian Hollywood was a big deal in its heyday.
you're interrupting me too much.
I'm
Listen,
sorry, but I'm not gonna let you retcon
no,
the
shh, shh.
truth of that game.
I'm exercising my hush privileges. Before it was Kim Kardashian Hollywood, it was no Kim Kardashian, nothing Hollywood. Right? I forget the name now, but it was just like a developer from Canada or a studio had made it, and the gameplay was the same. It was just it didn't have any celebrity attached to it, and it did alright, but it didn't do anything impressive. That game was bought or sold or whatever, and then Glue Mobile figured out it broke the deal with that game to be endorsed by and include and incorporate Kim Kardashian. You can't play as her, but she shows up in the game. That made the difference. So the gameplay mechanic didn't change. It was just the wrapping, basically. She she was the reason for that success, right? It wasn't on its own merit. We find a similar one with Niantic. Before its success with Pokemon Go, it had a game called Ingress, which was the exact same game, right? And then they took that off the market, and then they reskinned it with Pokemon, and then now suddenly it was $1 billion success. So IP celebrities, they make a difference regardless of the game mechanics. Is my first argument. So yes, absolutely did that contribute to a big thing. She would also promote constantly this game in her TV show, on Twitter in particular at the time, on X now I suppose, and she would constantly like push users to it. And then I remember talking to the CEO. He had a separate phone that Kim would call him on because that's I guess how that goes. And she would text him or call him and say like I'm gonna be wearing this beige bikini on the show tonight. Make sure you, and then they would have someone make that in the game so that you would have sort of a coordinated effort between what people would see on the marketing side and then they would go play it in the game or go buy it in the game. So this would drive actual revenue too. She made like 50 million bucks off of that whole effort or whatever just for sending out tweets and so on. It solidified an initial idea of people saying we should be actively involved, like gaming could be a channel. So you're right to point out, although prematurely, that it had an incredible moment, but that momentum kind of died, which is why this question kind of comes up, right? It's like, is this a long-term strategy or is this sort of like a flash in the pan? You can make a buck real quick if you're the first one in the market, because a lot of people followed. There was a Kindle version of this game. There was, Katy Perry had a game. What is that Angry Chef guy called? Gordon Ramsay had a game. So it's like all these celebrities started like endorsing games that nobody cared about in the end. So it's a fair question in that sense. Different from then what you see now. We mentioned Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk has Keanu Reeves all over and in it, right? He promotes the game. He voice acts it. Like they put him in there. Like it's almost like part of his legacy as a celebrity, as a personality, is Matrix and a bunch of other stuff, and also Cyberpunk now. And so they become interchangeable between the IP of the game as well as like a character from or sort of a persona that's related to it. And so I think the question is more that so the data says yes, when you have say celebrity athlete on the cover of the new Madden game, it will sell more copies. That's just fact. In the same way that that's the case for movies, and it's something along the lines of like 19% when you have a celebrity artist or athlete on the cover of a box game back in the day. And so that's a significant growth driver.
But,
The way that
but
I would rephrase the question, almost done, which is to say, it's like, does it help sell more games when you have celebrities? Yes, but I think it's now become a model where celebrities leverage games to build their own fame. So it's a two-way street. It isn't just I'm lending my face so that you can sell more copies to get a piece. It's like, no, I'm more relevant culturally because I live in the game space now to gamers know me, as opposed to I don't have access to them in some other way. So that's how I would rephrase it.
so I think that there is a very large distinction between celebrities who sort of show up in I mean, I think sports gaming is a unique set where it almost has to be set aside because like of course the athlete is featured on the cover of the game. The whole excitement of the game is that you control the athlete, right?
Hmm.
And it's sort of a different question than so the branding of a game as attached to a celebrity is different
Hmm.
from I did manage to look this up. The game Royal Match or
Hmm.
Royal Kingdom has been done a ton of celebrity endorsement, right? So LeBron James, Lisa Kudrow, Courtney Cox, Will Ferrell have all done celebrity endorsement. They're not in the game. This isn't Royal Match with Jimmy Fallon, right?
Hmm.
This is just like there are television commercials being run, being basically advertised to boomers, probably
Yeah,
young
yeah, I get it.
boomers and like probably Gen X, using reliable, trusted faces to encourage downloading of mobile apps, right?
Hmm.
Which is a totally different sort of marketing strategy than the kind of one, it's like kind of low lift, right? You just pay them and you create the commercial and you can just service that out across multiple channels. It's very different from this more embedded, using a game for one's own extension into for the celebrity to extend into the game environment, which I think is actually quite rare. I don't think those crossovers work that well usually, nor are they that prolific.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm. Yeah, there's very few game native celebrities.
yeah,
For instance, like what game developer do you know is selling shoes somewhere, right? Like, it's like,
but I
is
mean, I think the
Hideo
more
Kojima doing it?
interesting kind of parallel is also God. I mean, and this is increasingly happening is celebrity promotion for things like sports betting, which I'm gonna say is like close enough to what we talk about that we could bring it in here, right? So what was it? Nicki Minaj was doing a lot of sports betting
Hmm.
promotion um, a couple years ago. A whole bunch of the I mean, embarrassingly for the WNBA, a bunch of our top performers have come out to support Kalshi. One of these kind of polymarket like you know
Prediction
fucking death of
markets.
humanity like prediction market apps,
I
right?
love prediction markets. It's so interesting. It's so
Um,
interesting.
right,
We'll do a
that
separate
that
episode.
kind of pairing, which is sort of that's a classic marketing strategy, right?
Hmm.
Is I think of a different order and uses celebrity in a different way than the kind of thing that you're talking about, right? So I think first we have to be kind of specific about, disambiguate the different ways that celebrity appears in
Hmm.
games or related to games so that we can better identify like what is the attachment gain here, and then how do we
Hmm.
analyze its effectiveness or something like that.
No, that's a fair approach. I agree with you. I mean, this celebrity financial ecosystem seems to be centered around lending your likeness and vote of confidence for services to consumers, right? So when blockchain was a thing, the Super Bowl had like an endless parade of just Web3 or blockchain ads for all these,
Yeah.
like Matt Damon, like, oh, fortune favors the futurists or whatever. And it's like you had to be there or you'd be missing out. And so that tends to be part of the game. I think they look at video games just as another like channel to generate revenue. Some people really built their careers around it though. Like when Fallout came out, the TV series on Prime, it totally like elevated a lot of actors and actresses like visibility because now they had access to an audience. And so what's always so interesting to me is like on the one hand you have this natural exchange. At the same time, gaming never really seems to get like a fair price for the value that it brings to the people that like lean on it in some ways, right? How much does Keanu to the success he now has with Cyberpunk? And which is not to say that he wasn't famous already. It's just to say it's like
Pretty
it's a re
little, I think, is the answer I would give.
I
Right.
think I think that these are which is to say like, so do you then believe that the
I
games
don't know.
industry has no celebrity
The
culture?
youth also don't know who Madonna is based on the Sabrina Carpenter at Coachella situation. Keaton is giving us the 2-minute warning. And also, I also dug it up. Kathy Bates promoting Mansion Merge is
Wow.
also one of these mobile game sponsorship
Oh,
crossovers. So like they're coming for the boomers, man. Anyway, we gotta go. We'll be back
boomers.
here next week with all of your gross, disappointing game industry news. Join us then. Good night and good game. Unboxing, Play and Profit for the Gaming Curious is an independent production by Joost van Dreunen and Lane Nooney. Our producer is Keaton Ireland. Our logo was designed by Moira Zhang. For more from Unboxing, subscribe to our newsletter at buttondown.com/unboxingpodcast. Unboxing episodes can be found on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and wherever else you get your content.